So if you listen to me, you know I prefer depth over width. I know it sounds a little strange. My guest thinks he's on a sex podcast. It's not a sex. What I mean by that is I prefer. I'm talking about conversations, right? Deeper instead of longer. But tonight, I have a feeling. Uh, if you're listening, you don't see what's happening here, but Brian and I are sitting on the floor in front of a fire. We have a cup of mint and chip ice cream,
Yes.
which the
Cheers.
cheers, and we also have a little bit of bourbon for a nightcap. Cheers!
Cheers.
And so I have a feeling this episode may be longer than usual. All right, where to start with my friend Brian Reeves? So Brian Reeves reminds me of Christopher Reeves, uh, who played Superman in the '80s, and I do feel like you have an S on your chest because of the work that you do. Brian is a friend, and we run a bi-weekly men's group out of my garage together. And he's a new friend, so I'm getting to know him more and more. New to Los Angeles, he's a men's coach. He's an author. He's a speaker, and he's done, I would say, over a decade worth of men's work,
Yeah. Yeah, at least.
and also an amazing has an amazing story. So uh, I like threading who you are into the episode instead of front loading it. And
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
maybe a question I could start with is um, what got you into men's work?
Well, first off, I just want to honor this moment, dude. We are living our best life right now. We are living our best life. Good,
Let's talk about the whole day.
okay, the whole day.
So dinner, yeah,
We're up in the
we're up in the
mountains,
mountains, um,
east of LA.
east of LA. We had a nice dinner. Oh, we had a
We
workout.
went had a really good workout.
Got a private gym.
Yep,
Uh, it's just been easy. I know you love nature. Yep.
I
What's
do.
your relationship to nature?
It's my church.
Yeah.
It's my church. It's where I experience the transcendent God, at least more readily. It's more easily accessible to me there. And so, yeah, man. I mean, uh, I use this word a lot when I talk about men, trustable. And there's a lot to unpack there, but just want to say, trustable male friendship is so underrated. Is
Mm.
so um, like just John, we're sitting here in front of this fire just having a cozy moment with our ice cream and our bourbon and our and man, this moment is so sweet, it's
Mm.
so beautiful. And yeah, man, so thank you for inviting me up here, man. This is a treat.
Yeah, of course. We're also sharing a mic, which is a little bit difficult, but also kind of cool and intimate. It's almost like a talking stick. What I love about
Yeah,
sharing a mic is it forces people to not talk over each other.
yeah.
It gives us cadence, and so I love that we're sharing this mic. I want to point out that what he just said is rare in that two dudes. I mean, this can be Brokeback Mountain, right? Two dudes up in the
Right.
mountains eating ice cream, and
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh. It's great.
and he's saying it's a beautiful moment. And listen, like there's no weirdness in that.
Mhm.
And I wonder if it's because we are both men who are in our early 50s, or we have gone somewhere and come back. I don't know if there's a maturity that's required to accept that kind of language. I know that if this was happening right now and I was in my 20s,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
I would have I would have called you Nate. I would have gotten weird. I would have gotten
Yeah,
uncomfortable. I
yeah.
would have said, fuck this. What are we doing? And then, or I would have like, dick jokes and just been. But
Yep.
I actually appreciate um, the honesty, the vulnerability, and also just acknowledging this space, man. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good segue into the question you asked me about how did I get started in men's work. So my background. I was in a fraternity in college. I was a president of my fraternity. I was in the Air Force for 10 years. I was a captain in the Air Force when I separated at 26. Like was around men a lot. I played sports all through high school. Like I was no stranger to men. But for all those experiences, what they really taught me is that men aren't safe.
Mm.
men aren't safe to open up to, men aren't safe to be vulnerable around,
Mhm.
men are going to just be competitive. They're going to take from me something. They're going to exploit me in some way. They're going to dismiss me, whatever. All the stories that I had around men. Um, and yes, I lived very walled up, masked and walled off from not just men, but also therefore women. I just felt very, very lonely in my body, particularly when I got out of the military at 26. And I didn't know this, but I didn't like men.
Yeah.
I didn't like men because,
Yeah.
again, men weren't safe. They weren't trustable. And again, 25 years ago, I wouldn't even have known what I meant by that. I
Right.
wouldn't even know what makes a trustable man. But so, fast forward, let's see, maybe 10, even, yeah, 10, 12-ish years, one relationship after another is just a disaster. And I mean intimate relationship. My intimate relationships with women, and dude, I'm very educated. I even have a master's degree in human relations.
Right.
And yet my relationships with human women were always a disaster. They just endlessly, and I always had great intentions, and the outcomes were always just awful. And so, it was my late 30s. It was actually here where we are in Idlewild in these mountains where I was sharing this story with you earlier because we drove by the bookstore where I found a book. I'd rented a cabin here. It was 15 years ago. I came up here. I was getting out of a really just another painful demise of a relationship,
Mm.
and I thought I need to heal my relationship to feminine energy, and that was true. But so I went looking for a book to help me do that, and I went to this bookstore and someone came up with this book. The woman that was working behind the book, behind the counter, she pointed out a few books. I was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. And then she gave me this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves,
Mm.
and like all the hairs on my arm stood up. That's the book. And I read that book. Uh, and while I was in this cabin just down the street from where we are right now, man, like again, this
Wow.
15-year kind of
Wow.
closed circle moment, it's really blowing my mind.
Serendipity.
Oh man,
Yeah.
it's really profound. And but one of the big revelations from reading that book was, yes, I needed to heal my relationship to feminine energy, but I also and especially needed to heal my relationship to masculine
Mm.
energy.
Mm.
That blew my mind. I had no idea that that was even at play. I'm a dude. I'm a man. I'm a military guy. I played sports. I know how to I know how to wrestle. I know how to
Mm.
fuck around I know how to push back. I know how to whatever. But man, I was so disoriented around just being a man myself. And it makes sense. If I don't
Mm.
trust other men,
Mm.
well, I'm a man.
Mm.
How can I trust myself as a man when I can't trust men at all?
I want to put a bookmark there and even go further back. Um, when you say men are untrustable, which is powerful and also very relatable, I think, to many people, no matter what gender, because we live in a fatherless nation, which I've been talking about, which I've learned firsthand from working in nonprofit and all the kids. The common thread being dad was never home. What was the beginning of you experiencing not trusting men? And I kind of want to start at you at 4 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. So my dad left when I was 4,
Mm.
and
That was the first imprint.
first imprint in many ways. And my dad was kind of the life of the party at my home.
Mm.
Like he really brought me out. He played with me. He was a really good dad to a toddler.
God, you remember that?
I do.
You remember your dad being that way to you even before 4?
I do.
Wow,
Yeah, he
that's amazing.
played with me. So yeah, I do. I have those memories, and not a lot of them, but a few of them.
Good.
And again, he was, my mom's wonderful, but my dad was the heart
Mm.
of our house in a
Mm.
way. And one night he left, and it's one of those nights that's imprinted on me. Likewise, one of the strongest and most enduring memories I have of the night he left. And oh man, the overwhelming sadness, right? Not knowing why he was leaving, but
Mm.
just knowing that he was leaving. And um, and I think over the subsequent years, what happened for me, and I only can see this obviously in retrospect. I have no idea what's unfolding.
Did he leave and he was gone, or did he leave and then you would see him once in a while? What was that process for you as a 4-year-old now growing up? And I'm also, so interested in this because I'm a dad, and my daughter is in her, she's
Yeah.
4 plus, but I'm trying to imagine the what her experience would be
Mhm.
if tomorrow I was gone.
So, what's fascinating about this is that, yes, my dad was still a presence in my life.
Mm,
I would see him occasionally. I don't think I saw him for 2 years after he left.
mhm,
And then he came back into the picture, and I would see him, every couple weeks. And then that gave way to every couple months. And then I might spend a month in the summer with him and as a teenager. So, and I would talk with him on the phone fairly regularly. But so he loomed large in my imagination, and I got touch points with him occasionally. And what I what was fascinating to me that I only discovered in probably my when I really got to spend time with him in my 20s is that I had turned him into a fantasy.
oh,
I had turned him into a superhero of
mm,
sorts,
mm,
right? I didn't get to see the human man that he was because I just wasn't around him much. I
mm,
never saw him angry. I never saw him have a frustrating day. I never saw him just be a guy.
yeah.
And when I met him, really met him as a man myself in my early 20s, oh boy, it was a rude awakening. It was a shock. I did not like the man that I was meeting.
Mm,
And I don't know, to some degree I think every son has to go through that differentiation from father, the rejection of his dad so that he can craft his own identity.
mhm.
Um
And also dad no longer being a poster, dad being kind of a flawed, that having shortcomings. So like you said, you fantasized about
Mhm.
this bigger than life, and what you remember as a 4-year-old, he almost felt like a god, and then he
He
was
was.
gone.
Yeah.
And then of course, sprinkled throughout your life, and then your 20s, you're now seeing the human side of your dad. You're now seeing all parts of him, and it kind of popped the fantasy. Seemed like, also, dude, eat your ice cream. I'll hold the mic.
Thanks, man. Oh, it's so good. It's my favorite. Mint chocolate chip. Oh man.
Talking about dads and eating ice cream. This is crazy. Well, it's not crazy. It's just I think it's rare.
It's so right. There's everything right about this moment. Mm, you know what? And also at this time, by the way, I grew up with a stepfather.
Mm,
So I had another male elder, if you will, or older, who entered the picture when I was 10 years old. I have a great relationship with him today. Um, but it was challenging through my teen years.
mm,
Um, and I give him so much credit. I love this man. I give him so much credit for being present when my birth father wasn't, and not trying to be my dad to take over,
mm,
but he did the best he could. But he was going through he was wrestling with some demons at that
yeah.
time that I don't want to talk about, just in honor of his privacy. But he was wrestling with some stuff that also deeply impacted me. And so, an interesting thing that, again, I can only see in retrospect. I grew up with two kind of models of man.
Mm,
On one hand, you had the weak, impotent, pushover
mhm, mhm,
kind of man.
mhm.
Never got angry. Um, Never stood up for himself
Yeah,
really,
that's what they call
like the nice guy.
nice guy, the beta male, which I don't know
Sure.
if is
So
correct.
that model, and then on the other side, I had the raging tyrant,
Mm, yeah,
just scary,
right.
monster in the home kind of thing.
Mm,
And I was paralyzed between those two models of manhood. I didn't know this. It's like neither one of those were men that I wanted to emulate,
right.
but I didn't have any better models of manhood to emulate. I mean, I had just what culture was giving me, which was
Mm,
like the Playboy, James Bond,
yeah.
athletic, dominant athlete,
Mhm.
um, or charming politician, Bill Clinton,
Right.
the womanizing, but
Right.
charm. Again, none of these models of manhood really appealed to me, and so I spent so much time paralyzed around being a man, doing my
Mm,
best, not liking men, not trusting men, but being around men. And All the while, I am a man.
Mm,
This is a mess. Trying to do relationships with women from that place.
mhm.
No wonder it was just one disaster after another.
What was the rebirth moment? What was the as they say, the rock bottom?
Mhm.
What was the end of an act break, and then the beginning of a new one? Uh, I'm gonna predict it had to do with a woman. A lot of times it does. My death and rebirth was the ending of a marriage, so obviously that was relationship related. What was it for you?
Yeah, that was the relationship I was coming out of at 36 years old. That just brought me to my knees. I was in it for 5 years, and oh man, it just gutted me every single which way. That I would say that kicked me off in earnest. I had been doing some transformational work and personal growth work and over the years before that,
Mhm,
but it only kind of went skin deep. It never really penetrated my being.
mhm,
And I think late 30s for a lot of men, late 30s, early 40s tends to be a really pivotal time for a lot of men. A pivotal moment. It's like what I call the limits of our adolescence.
mhm,
We begin to run headfirst into them. The
mhm,
limitations of our adolescent not taking responsibility for our the impact of our actions on people. You know, um, uh, we hit a wall, and I hit that wall in my late 30s. So it was a relationship, but here's the thing: I was still doing personal growth work with a lot of women in the room. A lot of workshops, and
mhm,
nothing wrong with that. It's great. But I would go to workshops or go to trainings, and there'd be 20 guys and 80 women.
mhm.
And that part of me that didn't really like men loved that.
Right,
That
right.
was great,
Yeah, yeah,
great
yeah.
odds.
Great odds.
And that's fine. And I did a lot of good work in those places, but it wasn't until I went to my first men's retreat. And I think I was probably 39. 50, almost 51. So it was like 11 years ago.
Mm,
I went to my first men's retreat where there were only men in the room. And what happened over the course of, 48 hours, it wasn't even a long retreat, 48 hours. That was the first time that I touched my anger at
mm,
men
mm,
in and while surrounded by men. So like in a
mm.
safe,
Yeah,
this word trustable,
yeah.
like men, it's like as if men had to help me bring it out, but they also had to be the ones that could hold it.
Right.
Because women can't really hold in the same way that
We're
kind of anger.
well, we're also depending on the women, but we're threatening to women. We can be an unsafe space to women.
100%.
That might be part of the reason why they can't hold that, or based on their story and what their relationships have been with men.
Yeah, and I don't, I think it's great that men work with women. I'm not suggesting men shouldn't work with
Right.
women. I've done some of the most amazing, personal growth work of my life with women. But there's something irreplaceable about working with men. And one of the things I was actually a guy that I'm working with just the other day, we were exploring. He shared that he really wanted his ex-girlfriend to admit she was wrong about
Mm,
something.
hmm.
So I pressed him. I asked him,
Yeah,
"Well, why?
yeah.
Why do you what do you get
From her saying she's
from
wrong.
her
Yeah,
saying she was wrong
yeah.
about something?" And dude, it's a classic answer. He said, "If she would admit she's wrong, then it would mean I'm a good man."
Mm,
This is what we men often do. We turn to women to validate
validate,
us.
sure.
And that is not a sustainable or helpful place to get validation from. Not that other men is the place.
Right. It also, but it's interesting because that also changes the relationship dynamic. And even though on the outside it seems like you are being quote unquote a man, what you're actually doing is you're kind of becoming a boy in that
Hmm.
moment because you're
Like mothering her,
mothering her,
turning her into mommy.
needing something from her,
Yeah.
you being okay with uh, without the apology. That would make you more safe and more of a man, and also more contained and more solid, as opposed to you saying, okay, if you say if you're say if you say you're sorry, then that means something to me, and that's something that I want. That's something you should do. Then it's whether that's announced or not. Then that energy makes him more now cross over to the boy territory than a man territory. The
100%.
neediness, right? The mouth to nipple.
100%. And women, they don't want to be the ones that have to validate us.
Yeah.
They don't want that. They want us to come pre-validated.
Yeah.
Right? Pre-validated. And
They don't want to pay the hefty fucking when you leave the thing, the hefty toll.
exactly. That ticket should be stamped. Um, and 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 again, in men's initiation rites of passage through traditional cultures where those are a thing, we don't have those. We don't have rites of passage in our culture. Not intentional ones. We have a lot of pseudo rites of passage, like the fraternity hazing,
Yeah.
jumping someone into a gang.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's basically boys initiating boys
Mm-hmm.
into just
Mm-hmm.
a deeper expression of boyhood. Um, but in men's initiations, you have the elders, men who have been initiated already,
Mm-hmm.
are taking boys there. In some cultures, they even enact like a ritual enactment of stealing the boy from the mother,
Right.
taking him out
Mm-hmm.
from underneath the mother's care and protection. So that now he's joining the men. There is something primal and eternal and essential about a boy joining the elder men in his community.
Do you think that's missing today with this generation? I've always felt like I feel like we're the last generation that had a built-in rite of passage. Um, Even for you, I mean, we had many. For you, the military would be one, right? The crossing, any kind of relationship where you're cut at the knees. As long as you are looking at that and growing from it, not numbing yourself by jumping into something else, there is some kind of hero's journey and a rite of passage. Um, men's work, men's work is actually a rite of passage, and I feel like with the new generation, they're I don't know what it is, and I could be wrong, but I feel like with the boys coming up, becoming older, turning into men, there's no rite of passage for them. I mean, what? I mean, I shouldn't say that's a generalization, but like I don't know what the rite of passage is for American boys today.
Well, I would actually make the case that we haven't really had rites of passage for generations
Mm,
in the West,
okay.
in our culture. Again, we've had these pseudo rites of passage. Like, take, for example, military boot camp.
Yeah.
It is a rite of passage, no doubt.
Oh,
They
but it's
shave
pseudo,
your
right?
hair.
It's like a fraternity thing.
It's like a
Haze work.
fraternity
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
being hazed. I
Right.
mean, you're being screamed at,
Mhm.
basically being bullied into
Yeah.
your identity stripped from you. I mean,
Mhm.
and again, not that those things have no place in an initiation rite of passage, but what happens is in a lot of the rites of passage that we do in our culture, because again, there's no, we are an elder starved culture. One of the men that I've studied, Bill Plotkin, who writes a lot about the human development and what he calls egocentric culture, which is the culture that we are overwhelmingly, that we live in,
Mhm.
egocentric versus ecocentric. Um, Says there aren't a lot of true elders because there aren't a lot of true adults,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we have a lot of olders, not a lot of elders.
Ooh, and what's missing? Wisdom.
Wisdom,
Yeah.
right? Wisdom. And look, our culture, we worship youth.
Mhm.
I'm not blaming older people that they're not more wise. It's the culture that produces.
Well, with it's interesting. Just being Asian in the Asian American culture, elders are like Yodas. We like they, yeah. We don't. That's why we don't throw our grandparents into retirement homes. We live with them and we bow to them and we see them as like these like wisdom trees. In America, you get old and you're forgotten very fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a tragedy, but again, our culture encourages it. We're a throwaway culture. Something gets old, you just throw it away, replace it. Put it out to put the old people out to pasture. Send them down to Florida to the villages, give them a golf cart, send them, go have a good time. And so, we just don't have a lot of rites of passage. I mean, look, it's not really a hard sell. Look at all our politicians. Are there a lot of true adults politicianing us these days? I mean, it's again, as everyone's screaming at each other. It's like,
Well, let me ask you this. Rite of passage, I do believe in. I do think it's needed. We don't have a lot of that now. Can we create that for ourselves? So how would, because we can't really change I mean, I guess we could change culture collectively, but um, what would you tell men who want to cross the Great Divide
Yeah.
if they haven't gone through any kind of rite of passage?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, men of so in my work, I work with guys that are typically mid 30s to well into their 60s even.
Mhm,
And overwhelmingly, these are men that on some level are still wrestling with the things that we've been talking about. Like
mhm,
I had a man, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, oil worker, oil guy. He had an oil business,
mhm,
entrepreneur, very successful. He's 65 years old, Texas oil man, like is the man's man. Had been married for 40 plus years, had grandchildren, all the things. And he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, Brian, I have never really felt like a man. That's the epidemic right there. Men that don't really feel like men, and so try on all these weird, not weird, but all of these sort of, let's just say, shallow
mhm,
masculine
mhm,
ideals
mhm,
of manhood,
mhm,
right? And so I think um it's important to, first off, what I would suggest, whatever age that you're at, like get clued into men's work. Start researching, what does that even mean? What does that look like? I mean, there's the thing with the internet age. um Look, I'm 50. When I was in my late 30s, I was already coaching, I was already doing this work, and man, I had so much to learn. I was such an idiot. I'm still an idiot, let's be honest. But at that age, um one of the things, John, that I have that has become personally so important to me even still is working with older men. I
mhm.
guess that's really what I'm getting at. Because in the internet age, you have a lot of people that are really good at marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of the 30 somethings that are good at marketing and offering men's work. And I don't mean to be critical or detract. Good, keep going. But like, I have a mentor and a therapist who's a 74-year-old man.
Mhm,
He was an author. His name's John Lee. He's incredible. He was friends with Robert Bly. He did
mhm,
work with Robert Bly. This,
mhm.
oh my God, man, I need that elder
Yeah.
in my life. This
Yeah.
elder man. And so I think that's something, something that I would, you know, I suppose, I don't know, just encourage you to look out for is, where are the elder men, not just
Mhm,
olders, but men that you, again, we'll come back to that word trustable,
mhm.
right? What does it mean to be trustable? I'm curious, John, when I even say that, like, what comes up for you?
Yeah, well, first I want to say I think elder men are actually kind of rare. I do see older men, but they're not necessarily wise. Um, so to find an elder man, and it feels like you have many, uh, those are gems.
Oh yeah.
Those are gems. Trustable. When I think about the word trustable, I think about. So here's what's interesting about that word. Trust is one thing, but trustable is different in that
Mhm.
a man who's trustable means you have ability and capacity. If you're trustable, it means you have uh, the ability to create a space to be trusted. Trust is earned. It means you have, yeah, it means like you're at a place in your life where you're um, capable to hold a safe space or someone's heart. Uh, Trustable to me means also ownership, that you're able to own. I don't know if you can be trustable if you're always defensive, right? So,
Mm, mhm.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of what I imagine when you say trustable.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I think, well, first on the elder thing, I don't have a lot of elders, man. I've got a couple, especially when it comes to men.
Yeah.
I mean, men that I had, like, that I'm in regular contact with, I got one.
Mm,
I got other elders that I can reach out to,
right.
in a time of need, but I really got one,
Yeah.
man, and that's my therapist, and my mentor, John Lee.
I was hoping he would say John Kim, but he said John Lee.
Well,
You were one last name. Hey, Lee and Kim are also very,
well,
very close. You know,
that's
I'm talking
right.
about,
John Lee
yeah.
as
Wait, Lee as an American Lee or an Asian Lee?
he's American.
Oh, okay,
He's
yeah,
he's
yeah. Okay,
Alabama,
okay,
white as it gets.
okay. Got it, got it.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say this though about elder. Elder doesn't necessarily just mean someone who's by years older than you.
Oh, it's wisdom.
It really is.
Yeah,
It
it's
really
a
is a
wisdom thing.
wisdom. It's a
Yeah,
presence. It's a this word again, trustable.
yeah.
You know, for me, a man, and I'll often test. I'll
Hmm.
often test men when I first come into contact. I haven't really done that with you because you feel really trustable to me pretty quickly. You know, you felt really trustable to me, and what that means to me is trustable is like, okay, I'm human, man. I can be messy, I can make mistakes, I
Hmm.
can, I don't get it perfect all the time, man. I makes mistakes hell all the time, any of the time. If I can bring my messiness into the room, and I don't mean by being I don't mean my disrespect. I don't mean if I can be a dick to you and you'll be okay with it. That's not trustable.
Hmm.
But if I can, I don't know, if I can just be human, if I
Right,
can
right.
just be who I am and know that you won't judge me, or even if you do judge me, you'll get over it. You won't lead with that. You'll
Hmm.
you'll you'll know that that's about you, not me. you know that we can get into conflict and know that conflict will actually bring us closer,
Right,
not break us down. When I come to you with a success, you won't put it down. You'll celebrate my success,
right, right.
right? That is trustable to
Yeah,
me, right? Also, when I if I need to vent about my wife, or if I have a
yeah.
relationship
Hmm.
issue,
Hmm.
you won't give me the kind of advice that most men get, which is, man, women are crazy. Fuck that bitch.
Right, 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 right.
Just you get a new one.
Right,
Or
right,
don't
right.
be a pussy,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
That
yeah.
kind of stuff. You
The
don't
locker
just
room.
you don't just have my back, you have my wife's back.
Mm.
Like that to me is a
Yeah.
trustable man. You have my
Hmm.
life's back, not just my little ego
Right.
whims and indulgences.
My life's back. That's really powerful because it means I believe in you and your story, not just how you are showing up right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you're rooting for me at a higher level,
Mm.
and it's not a competition.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So many men, we get into the same room, we don't trust each other because again, we're going to get competitive. Status is a big thing for men, and I understand it. It's on a very primal level. A man with higher status has more reproductive opportunities. That's
Hmm.
just how it works on a primal level. And so it's like cooked into our genetic code that I need to be one up over the guy next to me,
Right.
right? This is also why it's powerful to do work in a room where there are no women present, because the moment a woman enters the
Oh, then
room,
they're posturing.
their
Yeah,
posturing,
yeah, yeah,
status becomes a thing,
yeah,
at least for some of the men,
yeah,
right? So doing work with other men without women in the room present, that goes, I mean, it can still show up, but
yeah.
it's different. It's a
It's
whole
different.
different
Yeah,
thing. And we can, again, with trustable men, we can challenge each other, but in ways that are not disrespectful or dismissive.
yeah.
We can challenge each other in the ways we need to be. We can be called forth into our greatness, rather than like boot camp in the military didn't really call me into a greatness. It fucking ground me into it ground me into a nothingness that then
Yeah.
the military pasted a uniform onto and gave me a mission.
Mhm.
It had nothing to do with my own authentic being in the world. It had everything to do with how the government wanted to use me
Right.
as a tool. And so, yeah.
What's interesting is the kind of term that comes to my mind, uh, which we've all heard before, but now I'm kind of living it as truth. I've become a believer, and that is that men sharpen other men. There's something about just men with other men, and I don't know if it's energy, relatability. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of things in the stew, but men give something to other men that other genders just I don't think they can.
Yeah,
You know, and
I think that's absolutely true.
I've heard that a lot, and I've been in locker rooms. I also joined the frats. I've been in those kind of rooms. I've been in boardrooms. Um, but all of those rooms, they weren't men sharpening men.
Yeah,
There was a lot of competition,
yeah,
a lot of toxic men, a lot of ego. But once the space is safe and vulnerable, kind of what we try to do, and then when you put men in that space, there's just an organic stirring, a sharpening, a calling out, a healthy confrontation. Um, it's weird, man. It's chemistry, it's biology, it's a lot of things that I just don't think other spaces hold. That's really powerful.
There's this. I was exploring this today with a group of men that I meet with regularly. This word fierceness,
Mm, mhm,
fierceness.
mhm,
A lot of men get caught in this bipolar trap of either, and we hear this from maybe the people, the woman or whoever we're partnered with in intimacy, or from other guys, or just from culture, that either I'm a dick, I'm aggressive, I'm that sort of alpha male dick, and that's the choice I have. I can be that guy,
mhm,
or that guy takes all the power, or I can give up all my power and be a weak, passive push.
mhm,
It's the same thing that, like I told you, I grew up with my in my father's situation.
mhm,
It's like
mhm,
those are the choices. Like a lot of men, we get caught in that trap. Either I'm a dick, or I'm a, for lack of a better word, pussy,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Pushover or asshole.
mhm,
And we get that especially in our intimate relationships. If you're in an intimate relationship with a woman, I think for a lot of men that trap is especially pertinent,
mhm,
because the nice guy doesn't want to bowl over his woman. He wants to make space for her, make her feel
mhm,
safe, be a safe presence for her, do all the right things, etc. Um, and even the nice guy, when that stops working, though, he can slam over into the tyrant asshole that
right.
all of a sudden now explodes and blows up, etc. What we men have to learn is fierceness.
Mm,
And that's different from aggression. It's
mhm,
different. It's like,
mm,
in a way, it's a beautiful merging of both the nice guy and the tyrant,
yeah.
right? It's like, it's a paradox of sorts.
Mhm,
It's such a delicious place for men to inhabit. And this is, you were saying, men sharpen men. There's another saying that iron sharpens iron.
mhm,
And in men's work, and when men get in the room and do good work like this with each other, there is a fierceness that gets to emerge.
yeah.
And what that looks like, we go home to our families, our um I mean, man, I was just talking again at a session with some men today, and there was a man who was really waking up. He had gotten this feedback from his girlfriend. I don't think they have a child, but he has a child. Anyway, his girlfriend said, "You never say no to us,
Mm.
to me or your daughter. You never say no."
She was saying that in not in a complimentary way.
Not in a
Yeah,
complimentary way.
yeah.
And I asked him, I said, "Did a part of you take that as a point of pride?"
Right,
Right?
right, right.
Like,
Yeah,
does that mean you're a good man?
yeah.
And he said, and this was months ago that he'd gotten this feedback.
It reminds me of when couples come and they say, we never fight,
Right.
and it's like, well, that's are you saying that's a good thing?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. And he said, "Yeah, you know what? I guess a part of me did. It's like I can take any, I'm very empathic. I can take anything that they want to throw at me, and I'm easygoing and all this." And meanwhile, they're separated. They're heading to their demise at this time. And so what he's been learning is how to stand up for himself.
mhm,
How to say no. This is not okay. And not in a again, not in the way where it's where it becomes that the tyrant, I'm going to take power,
mhm.
leave you with no power, my way or the
Right, right,
highway.
right, right.
That's not
Yeah,
fierceness.
it's fierce versus like you said the other word, which is what, tyrant?
Aggressive,
Aggressive.
like
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
aggression,
yeah.
or even violence on some level. And so, fierceness gets called forth in good men's work
Mm,
in a way that we can go back to our communities, our families, our relationships, and it's like, oh man, we just get to be who we really are, and we learn. There's this other beautiful distinction, John. We could do this all night,
So if
right?
you don't know how I work, so here's my listeners know. So this is the long version, and for me it's long because my podcasts are 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be ending soon. But what I also do is I take a butter knife to my content. So right after this, we're gonna get on Instagram and we're gonna do a short version, which is gonna be challenging because we're talking about a lot of deep
Oh
things
man.
on the Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes, so this is going to come to an end, but it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Oh, it's this is, I mean, again, I'm 50, you're what, 51?
51.
51. We're men of a certain age. And gosh, man, I definitely one of the the questions that I do get from men and mothers for that matter, about who are parents. Okay, how do I help my child
Mhm.
not just live into being an uninitiated man, right? How do
Mhm.
I help um how do I help my child
Yeah,
and,
how do I push them? How do I get them to go on their journey?
to go on their journey? And it's, there's not a lot of easy answers to that.
No.
There's not. And I think our culture is, we are, what's the word I'm looking for? We are ritual ignorant. We are rites of passage devoid. And I think that's something that hopefully will be changing. And as men are doing their work and more work, more and more men are recognizing the need for this at all.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
If you gave someone a prescription of how to put a man through his journey, then what you're giving them is a maze, and a maze actually is not a journey, right? So it's almost like we don't have it's impossible for us to give you an answer. We can give you elements, we could point you into directions, we could give you what the journey that we went through, but it's not a copy and paste job. Uh, the man or any human is going to find their own journey.
yeah.
So there is a hero's journey, coming to the village changed. That's very different than throwing someone into a maze. Because if you throw someone into a maze, you have created the maze. You are now playing God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's now not
Yeah.
that they're not in a journey; they're in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And rites of passage are going to come for us. I think it's a question of whether we're awakened to the like you said, like relationships for a lot of men, particularly relationships have become the domain of our rites of passage. That's unfortunate. It shouldn't be. That's not the place of relationship. I my heart breaks for the women that I think of in the past who were basically my my ritual elders,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on my unwitting uh ritual, holders, that they didn't sign up for that, but they had no choice.
Yeah.
They were partnered with an uninitiated adolescent man. um but I think that, man, well, I don't know, how do we end this on a hopeful note, Joan?
Dude, I love. I don't even know if we have to end it on a hopeful note. I like that we ended on an honest note,
Yeah.
and I love where we went with this. This is also, like you said, I could talk about this for forever, and that's because there's so much to unpack,
Yeah.
and it's because what we're talking about isn't light. It goes back generations. It's also important. I mean, this is something that I probably will talk about forever, you two, until we die,
Hmm.
because that's
Yeah.
part of it. It's not a one conversation thing. This is a porch swing conversation. Do you know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Which,
and I feel like for both of us, our overlap is. Um, this is something that we will be talking about, and also revisiting, learning, growing, expanding. It's an ongoing conversation.
100%. Can I share with, like, people, if they want to work with me, or
Yeah,
so,
yeah, of
like,
course, of course.
so if you're a man and you're listening to this, or you're a woman, you're partnered with a man, or a brother, or I'm sorry, a sister to a man that is just going through life by himself, even really, I mean, you work with even really successful men that are huffing it alone, lone wolfing it. And even when they're surrounded by people, well, I do year long initiation, essentially, small, intimate men's groups experiences. I'm actually, in January, I'm starting my Elevate 2025 journey for just 10 men. It's sort of kind of a rite of passage experience. But again, I got men in there that are in their 60s sometimes. So whatever you do, don't, if there's one thing that I would hope that someone listening, particularly a man listening, gets from this, is your the journey is not for you to go on by yourself.
Mhm.
And working with women, whether, you know uh, overtly as a coach or a therapist, I'm all for it. Make no mistake. Or working with women, like using the women you date
Mhm.
as your your coaches or your teachers or whatever. uh that will only take you so far. At some point, you're gonna, I say, to really thrive as a man, th- work with men,
Mhm.
figure out how to do that. Again, my name is Brian Reeves, Brian with a Y, Reeves. You can find out about my Elevate programs at my website, brianreeves.com, reach out to me. I'll be doing this work for as long as life wants me to do it. I did, John, I didn't say this, but I didn't want to do this work.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do this.
Yeah.
People ask, have asked me, how'd you become a men's coach? I didn't want to do this because you know why? Because fuck men.
Let's end on that. I love that. I
Oh,
love that.
okay.
Hey, fuck men. I love that. And if you, dude, what a great place to end. You could find out more about Brian Reeves on the show notes. So you could I'll put all the info there, where to follow him, go deeper with him. Thank you for listening. Be well. Oh, also, real quick, Brian teaches runs a men's group in our single purpose community. So he's in there once. Is it once every
Couple
other
times
week?
a month.
A couple
Yeah.
times a
Couple
month.
times a month.
So you could get a taste of him there, and then the rest on the show notes. Thank you for listening. Be well.